Hi everyone, it's Mike from CMS Critic. Today I'm sitting with Willie Zell. He's the CTO of dotCMS, and today he's going to take us through dotCMS 3.2. And as we're going through this, I'm going to grill him and try to make him as uncomfortable as humanly possible, so that hopefully he messes up for everybody. So we'll go ahead and
Great, that sounds wonderful, Mike. Absolutely. So we released dotCMS 3.2 actually last week, which was April 25th.
Right.
And dotCMS 3.2 is a continued evolution of the dotCMS line of products. And just a bit of background about dotCMS. dotCMS is a Java-based open source content management system. It's database agnostic. It can run against 4 different major databases, and even H2 if you want to run it locally, that's fine as well. It's very, very easy to develop for, very easy to extend, and very easy to engage with from a business user's perspective, as well as from a web developer's perspective, as well as from a Java developer's perspective. Right. Okay. And so what we've tried to do is make a tool that can please everyone, which is and we balance the dependencies between those different distinct audiences, because we do see those as different distinct audiences.
Okay.
As an open source product, you can download dotCMS. You can come to our site, fill in this small form, and it'll redirect you to a download page. That'll give you a zip file that you run one command, and it'll launch dotCMS. dotCMS will be up and running against Tomcat in a local database. Okay. And it'll automatically build this entire starter site. Okay. Okay, now, the starter site is just a demonstration. dotCMS is a platform. While we're opinionated developers, we try not to get in the way of what other developers want to do with our software.
Don't jump to any conclusions.
Don't jump to any conclusions. We don't force a look and feel. We don't force a navigational flow. And we really try to get out of the way. dotCMS sites there's not a look and feel for a given dotCMS site. They can look just about like anything out there in the wild, even if they're just being used as a content engine, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay, sounds good.
So you can see this site that comes up. It has a number of features doing things you'd expect from a content management system, building navigation automatically. It has a news engine. And it has something that I think it's kind of interesting. Content in dotCMS can be geolocated. Okay. Okay. So you can have a content field with a content object with a geolocation field, and based upon that information, it's going to pull the latest. This is an example of the latest news closest to where you are in the world, right? Likewise, and it won't work locally, but I'll do it on our demo site. dotCMS, when a visitor comes to dotCMS begins to learn about that visitor, okay, and store that information regarding the visitor's experience with the site. So this little tab here, it's a little bit hidden, but it's just an example of the kind of information that we're getting, right? So you can see where we're coming from, you can see our refer, where we came from, you can even see the click trails, where I've been on the site. Right. And this is stored in the visitor object on dotCMS, and so you can use that in developing pages, templates, widgets in the system to drive personalized content based upon that information.
So we're talking about building out, profiles from, I would assume, probably anonymous users, as well as ones that might have created an account on the site.
Exactly.
Sort of personalize the system based on that.
That's exactly right. Okay. Another nice resource, another feature of dotCMS, and I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but all the content in dotCMS is underlied by an Elasticsearch. Okay. If you're not familiar with Elasticsearch, what that is a elastically scalable search index that allows you to do things like full text search of all documents within the system, to do full text search of all the pages within the system, do things like facet content faceted searches, right? Yeah, and that's allows us to do the kind of geolocation and that content piece. Now, the beauty of the Elasticsearch is that you can use those. You can use the results of Elasticsearch queries in developing your sites and developing things like this is a document repository, right? which is a custom content type that's just searching a document repository in .cms.
Okay.
And it's a very, very scalable, very robust search result. When you see in .cms a dynamic displayed content section, so what I'm talking about, for example, here is a common example, latest news. Okay, this section is being generated not from the database, but it's being generated on the fly from the results coming from Elasticsearch.
Okay.
Okay, and that's a very, very quick, millisecond type operation, and you can have pages that are just generated dynamically based upon those results coming from Elasticsearch. Very, very performant.
So can you talk a little bit about how that might work? So let's say someone's going to try to set something up. They want to take a particular module, apply it to a page. How do they create that search query in the first place in order to apply it?
Absolutely, sure. So let me jump in. I'm going to jump into a little bit of the sort of a content editing piece.
Okay.
And then I'll jump in and I'll show you how that search can be generated and how you can leverage that.
Sounds good.
On the page. So editing content in .cms is a very simple proposition. From a business user perspective, they can browse a site normally, and if they want to edit, they see a piece of content on a page that they want to edit, a content module, they can just type in edit, be redirected to the login. And the one thing that's important to note, the administrative tools in .cms are localized in 7 or 8 different languages. I'm not sure what the number is there now. So you can change the back end, the admin tools, to Chinese or whatnot.
Okay.
Once you've logged in, you're taken, as most of these tools do, to the site in what we call edit mode.
Okay.
Right. Edit mode, you can browse the site normally. It's a completely permission-based view of the site. And if you want to edit a page, what you can do is check that page out, lock that page for editing.
Right.
Okay, so the locks are pessimistic, meaning that if you've locked the page, someone else can't come and make changes on top of your changes on that page. They have to go, you have to release a lock to that person.
Okay.
Right. So editing content, you can edit content in line. You can just cite, here's my edit, and you can save that as a draft. Obviously that's not published live, that's just a draft mode, and you can actually preview and see exactly what's changed. It's going to redline your changes. It'll redline the imagery as well. So if you're pleased with your edit, which I'm very pleased with that edit, you can go ahead and publish that. Okay, and it's going to say, do you want to publish the page with the related dependencies? Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I went ahead and published that and published all the content on the page. And if I take a look now, you can see my change has been made live.
Right.
Okay, so from a very simplistic viewpoint, that's the quickest way to make content edits, to make content changes within the system. You can just browse to what you want to edit and go and begin editing that. Okay. Okay. When we hit publish, the interesting thing was it asked us, do we want to publish all the dependencies? Okay, so that's an important point about how dotCMS works. Content in dotCMS does not equal a page. Content in dotCMS lives in the content repository. You build in dotCMS content types that define your site. So for example, as a news site, you would build a news type, right? And that news type would have properties that, if you had a product type, wouldn't have. Your product type would have an SKU, it would have a title, would have a price, it would have a description, perhaps specifications, perhaps, versus your news type, which would have an author, a byline, a publish date, an expiry date, headline, that type of teaser, right? So they'd be different objects. So when you build a site in .cms, what you do is you define your different content type. And in looking at this page, this content type at its core is the simplest content type we have. And I'll go ahead and I'll click here, this edit content button, right? And this content type is a generic piece of content. And at the simplest, the generic piece of content has a title, it has permissions, it has everything's versioned in the system, all your changes that you make to all the different Content objects are all version. But that's it, right? So that's basically a WYSIWYG blob.
Yeah.
You can drop on a page, right? And you can compare that to, let's say, a news type, a content, like a news article, right? And so a news article has a headline, for example. It has a location, right? And this is an example, actually this geolocation is an example of a custom field. You can write, custom fields which allow you to define custom controls for your business users when they're editing content.
Okay.
It has an SEO-friendly title like a slug.
Yep.
A byline, a publish date, an expiry date, a lead. I mean, all of these different properties. It actually has an image associated with it. And all images in dotCMS can be edited right from the admin tool. A couple nice things about this tool, being able to crop an image. The nice thing about this tool from a web developer standpoint is this image is being cropped, and this is a RESTful URL for the manipulation you're doing on your image. So what that means is, if I look, you can see here, this is saying I'm going to crop, resize, what the dimensions are. So what that means is when your template designer is building this template, the template designer can specify, maybe based upon the screen resolution of the user, based upon the viewport size, they can specify and write that URL specifically scaled. Does specific things. You could saturate it, it can grayscale it, it can do all kind of things.
Okay. Now, one of the things that's popped into my mind here, so we've got a number of different types of content types.
Right.
The content within them, how can that be reused? So let's say you've got a piece of content in the body of a news article that you're going to want to reuse somewhere else on the site.
Right.
How do you go about it?
So let me jump back, and I'll talk about this admin screen here in a second. That's the admin tool of dotCMS. So reusing, let's say we wanted to reuse the news article on our page. I'm going to just remove that piece of content from this page and click this Add Content button and pull down Reuse.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so I can say I want to reuse, and I can search the news articles and say I'm going to reuse, what were we looking at, the Brazilian one? And reuse the Brazilian news article, and it's going to drop that in place.
Okay.
In a format that's designed by your template developer. Right? It's in a
So depending on where now, so the question I guess that's popping to my mind next then is that basing it on the template that's been assigned to the content, or is it basing it on the template that's assigned to the page?
It's the template assigned to the page.
Okay. So you can take, so it's going to take whatever's available there and fit it in the page.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay.
Right. And the templates a very, very strong point in dotCMS. You can edit the templates on the fly. Now, for business users, what we built is this sort of template builder, which is really a layout designer.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So you can give your business users the ability to, I want to add a 2-column row under this. I want to add, I don't want to, or let's say I want to add a sidebar. It'll allow them to do that type of work on the template. And you can preview what that's going to look like, right? The layout, what that's going to look like, and you can even do things like preview what that layout's going to look like on a mobile device, of various sizes, right? I haven't gone into the, dotCMS as a tool. Again, we try to get out of the way of what developers want to do in the system. Mm-hmm. In that vein, we support 13 or 16 different responsive frameworks. We have starter sites or starter kits that you can upload that if you want to use YAML or whatever you want to use, Pickle, I don't know what they're called, but whatever you want, whatever.
That's a good one. Pickle. Yeah.
Whatever.
Sounds good.
It does sound good.
Yeah.
Right. You can also here, this theme is the actual theme that's being applied to this page. You can grant your users the ability to change the theme. So let's maybe change it to, let's say, the intranet theme. And that's going to change the entire look and feel of what you've been doing there.
Perfect.
On the page.
Okay, so one of the things we should probably do, because we've been jumping around because I asked too many questions, is probably show people what the heck it looks like when they first log in.
When they first log in, right? So I'm going to go ahead and log in as, let's say I'm going to log in as a contributor, right? Okay. So we have contributor Joe, and I log into the back end as Joe contributor. Now, a couple nice points about the back end of dotCMS. These tabs and the tools that are associated with them are all permission based.
Okay.
Okay. So as a site editor Joe, or as a contributor Joe, you can see when I log in, I get my workflow.
Right.
Right. If I click over to the site editor, or the site browser, I'm seeing a much reduced view of what I can change. Right. I'm seeing only a single folder. I'm seeing only the assets to which I have permission.
Okay.
Right. If I click over to the content tab, now this tab is where content managers can actually manage content. You can see I only have access to a single content type document.
Okay.
So we were talking about all those different types, the news types or the product types. You can assign a user to be, let's say, your news manager, and just grant them the access to the news type, and they can just manage the news. They don't have to even manage the site.
Right.
They can just manage the news and let the web developers, let the template designers figure out what that's going to look like when it goes, on your site.
Because one of the things we had spoken about before we started recording was that, a lot of old school content management systems and even some new existing ones expose people, I think, in a lot of instances to too much information, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of information overload, and there's a lot of areas where you, as someone who's going to provide support for those, you don't necessarily want to have questions where they're not necessary, for instance, right?
Exactly.
So you don't want to expose people to, whole subsets of the CMS. You want to show them what they're going to be using and eliminate the rest of it, so it's not.
Exactly.
So the space they're working in is not only not overwhelming, but comfortable, and they can get their stuff done without a billion steps to do it, right?
Exactly.
So reducing the click trail, I guess, is the big piece to it.
That is the big piece. And,
okay.
And and the permissions are very, very granular. Content can be permissioned. Here we're looking at content type level permissions. Permissions can be down to the content object. Okay. So you can have a content object that only a single person in the system can edit, for example. So as a Joe contributor, I'm going to go ahead and click Add a New Document here. You can see a document has a file name, title, description, published date, has tags. But I don't have permission here to publish it.
Okay.
Right? I have to send it for review. And that's going to fire off a workflow task that will upload that, and I'm going to have to place it into a particular folder. And I can send this for review, and that's going to give you this workflow action and automatically assign it to the role reviewers.
Right. So whomever's
a reviewer, emails will go out. This can be a person. You can assign it to a role. Either way.
What other methods? Do you have any other methods of notification other than just email?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't, but it's a really extensible. Our workflows are very, very flexible and extensible,
okay.
Right from the back-end UI. One thing that many of our clients do is they write custom actions that allow, when a user clicks this button, do this custom action.
Okay. So
right?
Yeah.
So an example of that is on a news article, for example, when you can have a button over here that says, send to Facebook, and when the user presses it, it's actually going to go and post the news article with a link and the image to their Facebook account that's been credentialed, obviously in the back end.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's a type of customization plugin that can be written in dotCMS as an OSGI-based plugin. Again, I'm sort of developer speaking here, but but they can be hot swapped, at runtime.
Okay. So you send this for review, you can put in your comments, it fires it off.
It fires it off.
What's it look like from the reviewer's point of view?
So from the reviewer's point of view, what it looks like, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to log in. Let's see, I'll show you what it looks like, Jane. Jane's a reviewer, and you can see here I have this one workflow task. It's basically a file, and I can take a look at the file. I can edit the content. I can return it for edits. I can push it on to legal.
Okay.
This whole process is defined. Let me log out as Jane Reviewer here. This whole process is defined in the UI. So if I come over here and take a look at the workflow scheme, so I just logged in as an admin user,
yep.
Clicked on the workflow schemes. These are the actual schemas for the workflow. And the workflow scheme we were just in was the document management workflow, where it ran through these 5 different content lifecycle states: editing, review, legal approval, published, archive.
Okay.
Right? And you can see here that based upon these states are completely definable by you.
Okay.
And if I wanted to grant, Joe contributor a new ability, basically new button on their edit content screen, I can say, I can have my new button, or some action that it can take, or skip, review, and publish. I can define that right here and say, okay, Joe contributor can use that, and basically what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and publish content, right? And you define
I got you, yeah.
the sub actions that you want to, maybe you want to unlock the content before you publish it. You define the workflow that you want. So when Joe Reviewer comes, hits skip, review, and publish, it's going to automatically, if you have the right permissions on the actual piece of content, it's going to automatically go ahead and publish that content.
And then individually, it's also showing you've got the ability to add other stuff like comment and all that other functionality as well.
Exactly.
So from the admin standpoint, this is basically what the system looks like. You've obviously a lot more stuff exposed.
Right.
Right.
Right. So, and we can run through some of these pieces here. The site browser, you can see here, this looks like a Windows Explorer. And the nice thing is in dotCMS is that we've tried very hard to make this very familiar for people who are used to developing websites. Like, we don't want them to have to relearn how to path to an image or something like that. So you can upload an image to /images/404, and it's going to actually respond on that URL. And underneath the covers, that doesn't exist. That's a virtual URL, right? But for all intents and purposes, it looks just like a Windows Explorer type interface.
Yeah.
You can connect to it even via WebDAV, and you can drag files up and down, delete files, and what you're doing there is you're actually creating content that lives in the system. But the nice thing is it's a very straightforward approach to building out websites and web properties. So that's the site browser. This is the content view into the system.
Okay.
Okay. And so you were asking earlier, how would you build a poll of news, or if I wanted to use
like a search query.
A search query. So what you can do is, let's say I want to manage the news type, and I can search, ZIL, I guess, Brazil. Or that's a simple search. That's searching all the fields of the content type. I can do a more advanced search and say I want to give me all content that is tagged investment, for example. Okay, so it's going to return that. I want to order it by publish date, right? So just an example. These are just example things you can search by. You can search by headline. You can search by topic, which is sort of a taxonomy.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very powerful feature, I think, for people that use dotCMS on a day-to-day basis. I can pull down here, and it's kind of obfuscated by the help button, but I can pull down here this show query piece. Okay. What this piece is going to show me, it's going to show me the actual code snippet that I can drop into a widget or some sort of a template that will replicate that pull that we're looking at right there.
Gotcha.
Okay. It'll also show you the API endpoint that will replicate that query that you have there. So this is another very important component of dotCMS, what we see ourselves as, and what we see ourselves as moving forward. We see ourselves as a content engine moving forward.
Right.
We're delivering content. In this case, we're delivering it to a website, and we're building out a website, and the tooling is there for that. But we also deliver content into into mobile apps. We deliver content into the Internet of Things, objects, other systems. Basically, people are beginning to come to us and use us and say, we have this existing product or product catalog, let's say it's running ATG. We want to be able to reach in, have our content editors manage promotions and do things like that, and we just want to reach into your system and pull that content out and put it on our existing sites, right? All the content in dotCMS is accessible via RESTful APIs, right? And you can push content into dotCMS or pull content out of dotCMS. So if we take a look and we click on this link here for the JSON representation of our content objects, you can see here it's going to give me back that list of of content objects. Okay. And so what that allows people to do is do things like remote, either via JavaScript or on a server-side code, to remote and pull widgets content from dotCMS into disparate systems.
Right. Okay. Very cool. What other key pieces do you want to show us for dotCMS today that you think people need to know about?
Absolutely. So 3 things I want to talk about before we wrap up. One is our ability to host multiple sites. Okay. We have clients who are hosting thousands and thousands of websites in a single dotCMS instance.
Okay.
Okay. Or in a cluster of dotCMS instances. So the second thing I want to talk about is the scalability of the system and the ability for dotCMS to actually auto-scale, right? What we've done is we've worked to allow dotCMS in a cloud environment you can just add nodes to dotCMS and it will scale horizontally. They'll automatically wire themselves up to scale horizontally to be able to handle load. And the third thing I want to talk about is the push publishing capabilities in dotCMS, which I think are probably the easiest to use in the industry, okay. Which is a very, very cool feature and a cool feature for a lot of different architectural decisions when people are deploying dotCMS.
Okay.
Okay. So beginning with the multi-tenant piece, you can see we've been browsing around the back end, and you can see here what we've been looking at is a site called demo.dotcms.com.
Right.
Right. We can come over here to this site manager, and what you can do from the site manager is you can actually just add websites from the site manager, right? And when you click add a site, you can copy an existing site, right? Or you can start with a clean slate.
Okay.
Okay. Copying an existing site, what that allows a multi-tenant implementation to do is to be able, their developers can build a site skeleton or template that has all the features that they need to deploy a full-blown site for X industry. So for example, if it's a hospital company, there's a skeleton hospital site that doesn't have any sort of specific content but has the tools, has the healthcare news, has the
all the
modules already predefined, the template's predefined,
yeah.
And they can copy that existing template and literally have a full-blown hospital site set up in hours.
Okay.
Okay. So if we go ahead and copy a site here, you can choose what you want to copy, right? Okay. So content can be completely separate, on a per host basis, or content can actually be shared across those hosts.
Now, how would this work with, say, taking that one step further? You've got an American site you want to deploy in Germany in a different language.
Okay.
So you're going to copy the template back. You're going to be able to copy the template and everything else as well, and individually select whether or not there's any content.
That's right.
I'm guessing, and then pull. Is there a way to take your existing content and get it translated and all that?
Absolutely. So I'll jump off here and show you every piece of content in dotCMS can be multilingual or internationalized.
Okay.
So we're looking here at this news article in English. Let's say I wanted to have a Spanish copy of it. We can pull that down, and it's going to say, do we want to pre-populate the Spanish content? And what we just did there is we're creating a Spanish variant for that content object, right? What you would do then, if you, let's say you wanted to push this to an automated translation system, is you could have a workflow task here that says, send a translator.
And then they can do their thing.
And they can do their thing, because programmatically that's going to take the content and package it up and however they need it to do, and they can send it back into the system.
Okay, so sort of pull you off scale.
That's okay.
A little bit, but yeah, so you've got the ability to take your content and make it multilingual. You've got the ability to launch different sites based off of a sort of a skeleton framework. And I'm assuming you can also copy the content specifically if you wanted to do that too. Exactly.
Okay. Exactly. So I went back to the sites and I want to create a new host, and you give it a host name. And dotCMS will virtual host, very much like Apache will, or Nginx will, based upon the host name, the aliases that you give it. It will automatically start responding to that particular host. I can do things like add keywords if I wanted to add keywords that would show up across the sites in the meta tag. You can also do that on a per page level as well, obviously for SEO. If I wanted a mobile URL, Google site keys, so at different sites are going to have different API keys potentially. Right. Yeah. This is all, a host in dotCMS is just a piece of content, so all of these fields and properties are editable by you. Okay. Okay, so we said go ahead and copy, and it's going to create a completely separate host. Right. That host can be permissioned separately, so when we logged in as Joe Contributor, you could have Joe Contributor can only contribute to this host, or can only see that host, for example. Right, so we have dotCMS instances that literally have hundreds of content contributors all working on thousands of different hosts without, overlapping in terms of permission.
And then we can see already from the way the progress bar is moving, I mean, it's a pretty quick process. So a pretty slick way of getting a new copy up quite fast.
Really fast, right. Okay. And so when we, in redesigning, doing a site redesign, lots of times you can just make a copy of your host and begin doing a full site redesign. You reuse the same content objects, but you can just get a new redesign up and running pretty easily.
Nice. Okay.
So the second thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up is the ability to auto scale. Let me click on this configuration tab here. This allows you to configure, certain properties in the system. I should have had another node up and running here, but if I click on this network tab, okay, I only have a single node here. But if I had multiple servers in my cluster, I would see all the servers here. Right. And you can click on them and get reporting on them based upon whether the cluster's live green, the status of the cluster, the status of the assets, whether or not they're going to be able to serve read write into the binary files, and just basically give you a report on the health of your cluster. If I brought up another server, it would automatically wire itself into this cluster. Okay. And so we have customers now that need to scale in the cloud, and what they're doing is they have normally, you pay per usage in the cloud. Mm-hmm. They have 3 servers running, for normal traffic. If there's going to be a big blip in traffic, then they can fire up another 3 servers, wire those it'll automatically wire those together.
But not affect the actual production site.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Very slick.
And then finally, I want to show you the push publishing capabilities of dotCMS. Okay, so dotCMS has the ability to completely separate the authoring environment from the production environment. Okay, so you can do all of your content authoring on a separate instance and actually push that over to a production environment when you're ready. And you were asking before this talk, how would I build a list of things I want to publish in a single time and push that to live?
So a Christmas promotion, for instance, for a company, right? They're going to want to change perhaps like a banner on the front page, so maybe some promotional content.
A landing page is going live, and so this is how this screen here is how you provision your publishing environment, and it's completely flexible. So you begin by saying, I want to add an environment. Okay, so this is a production environment, right? Who can send to that environment? It's permission-based, so you can have a certain permission on a given environment. And you can say, I want to push to a single server, if it's a cluster, or I want to push to all servers. So let's say you have 4 different clusters. Let's say they're geographically dispersed. You have one in Europe, and you have one, in Asia Pac, and then you have one in Seattle or something. Right? You can say, I want to push to each of those. When I push to prod, I basically want to push to all 3 of those. Right? And so once I have an environment, then I define this server I want to push to. And you can give it a port, HTTPS, and you give it an auth token. You can give it a file path if that token lives on the file system. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, what that's done to the system is that's told the system, now there's a publishing environment set up, right? And so when I come back to my given browser here, right, I can do things like I want to push publish this folder, and I can say I want to push it to prod at this date and time. Gotcha. Okay. Or I can do the entire host. I want to say I'm going to push publish this entire host to prod at that date and time. So this would be good in an instance where you've got 10 sites all throughout different geographies, or even probably more likely it'd be better if you were doing like English version specifically, right? So you're going to push one piece of content out to say 9 different servers, all of which might be serving a different. So say you've got like a hospital-based one, like you were saying as an example, you got 9 hospitals, but you want to push one thing that the company's doing on all of those. All of those things. So you can just bang deploy it. Deploy that. Okay. And you can add these together. So I want to say I want to this image here. I can add it to what's called a bundle. Okay. Right. So this is our our Christmas promotion. Gotcha. So now we're doing sort of like bulk scheduling. Bulk scheduling, and you can say I want to push that image, and I want to push that folder, right? And you want to push whatever these different content objects are, right? And you can push the entire content types. You can push OSGI plugins. So if you have you can add an OSGI plugin to your bundle and build a bundle of functionality. That's interesting. And publish it live. Okay. Seems like that's fairly unique too. And then you can come to your bundles here and say, okay, this is my Christmas promo bundle. Right. Right. And you can download it for upload or programmatically upload. If you wanted to do it programmatically, you can download the bundle as a zip file. Okay. But you can say, I'm going to publish this on Christmas Day. Right, and say what are maybe the 21st to prod, and that's going to schedule that to be all of those pieces to be published at that date. Perfect. Okay, everyone. So those are the key pieces to dotCMS 3.2. Thanks for taking us through it and showing us the product. Part of what you're going to be seeing coming up after this walkthrough, we'll be doing an interview with Tim and Tyler from Tim from dotCMS, Tyler from Architect, and chatting a little bit more to dig a bit deeper into what their thoughts are about the industry, the product, where it's going to go in the future, and that kind of stuff. So stay tuned.